Have you ever stood beside a river so quiet it felt as though the world were holding its breath? Have you felt the hush that lives beneath running water? Not the sound of flow, but the stillness beneath it. There are rivers that dream in the dark, winding across the land like ancient veins pulsing with memory. And there are creatures, it is said, that live within those dreaming waters. Not monsters, no, but guardians, keepers of the forgotten, watchers of the deep. Along the slow body of the Waikato River, in a place where mist never lifts from the reeds, there is a story they do not tell in full. They whisper it in fishing villages, in the shadows of fern groves, in the soft tapping of wood on water. It is the story of a Taniwha, vast and hidden, not cruel, but not gentle either, and the boy who once dared to walk too far along the riverbank. His name was Rokura, a name that meant feather, light-footed, curious and soft of speech. He was no more than 12 when it happened, though in the retellings his age changes like the river itself. Some say he was younger, some say old. What does not change is this. He walked alone, on a morning soaked with fog, where even the birds kept their songs to themselves. His village lay behind him, sleeping still, smoke from cook fires curling into the dawn. Rokura walked where he was told not to, past the flat stones where children played, past the willow stump where the eels fed, beyond the place where the water grew dark without reason. That place was not marked with signs, but it was known. Even the dogs did not drink there. Even the frogs did not sing. But Rokura, dreaming of finding rare feathers or smooth stones, wandered on. He was thinking of nothing at all when he saw it. A ripple that moved without wind, a curve beneath the surface like a living log. The water shivered as if breathing, and then it went still. He knelt, not to touch, not yet, only to look. They say the Taniwha does not appear to those who fear it. It comes, instead, to those who forget to be afraid. At first there was only a shimmer, then a shape, long, scaled, but softer than expected. Not sharp, not cruel, just what? Its eyes surfaced for only a breath, round and dark as polished stone, with a thin golden ring like the edge of a sun seen through smoke. And Rokura, foolish and fearless, met that gaze. What passed between them no one knows, but something passed. He did not run. He did not cry. Instead, he stood, bowed his head, and whispered something only the Taniwha could hear. Later, when the elders found him sitting cross-legged by the water's edge, his feet bare and his hands muddy, they asked what he had seen. Nothing, he said. Only the river, remembering itself. But that night, the rains began. It was not an ordinary rain. It came not from above, but from around. Mist rolling in sideways, seeping through walls, dripping from ceilings without clouds. The fires hissed and died. The dogs howled once, then were silent. No one spoke of it. They only gathered their children close and waited. In the morning, the river had risen but not flooded, and on the bank, beside the path where only elders walked, there lay a gift, a feather too long for any bird, white at its tip, black at its base, and warm to the touch. Rokura knew it was for him, but he did not take it. Instead, he gathered his friends and taught them a new rule, not from fear, but from reverence. When you pass the dark water, you leave a stone. Not just any stone, one chosen, one smooth, one held in the hand, until it learns your warmth. You place it by the water's edge and whisper something forgotten. Some say the stones build a path no human can walk, a path only the Taniwha knows. Others say the stones are a kind of language, and the river is learning how to speak. Years passed. Rokura grew older, quieter. He no longer sought feathers. He became a watcher, a keeper of silences. Children whispered of how he sometimes sat by the river at dusk, his feet still bare, listening, not to the wind, not to the birds, but to something deep. Once, during a long drought, when the water pulled back and the river turned to stone, Rokura disappeared for 3 days. When he returned, he carried in his arms a bundle wrapped in flax. He would not open it. but it smelled of deep earth and salt. He gave it to the eldest woman of the village, bowed once and said only, "It is remembered." No one asked questions. Some stories are too old for words. The Taniwha was never seen again, not by eye, but its presence lingered. In the way the trees bowed toward the water, in the way fog refused to leave certain bends, in the way children, without knowing why, still placed stones by the dark places and whispered into the hush. The river remembers, the Taniwha dreams. And Rakura's name, Featherlight, is still spoken with quiet reverence on certain mornings, when the mist does not rise and the world feels close enough to breathe on your skin. It is said the Taniwha sleeps still, curled beneath the river's skin, not in anger, but in listening, waiting not for sacrifice, nor for fear, but for someone to speak to it again, softly, to remind it that it too is not forgotten, that it too is still loved. And perhaps one day, when the river thickens with silence once more, the Taniwha will open its stone-ringed eye and remember the boy who bowed instead of ran. Have you heard the hush of a mountain wrapped in cloud? Not the wind, but the silence that comes after it. Have you ever stepped into a place where the light changes its shape, where the green feels older than time, and the mist follows you like memory? The Aotearoa ranges do not speak in words. They speak in echo, in root and moss, in the breath of unseen watchers. There are stories carried in the bark of those trees, older than any map, older than the name of Aotearoa itself. This is one such story, not often told, and when it is, only in low tones. It is the tale of the white-eyed ones, the Patupaiarehe, spirits not of the underworld, nor quite of the sky, but of something in between. They are not to be confused with ghosts, though they are pale, nor with gods, though they are powerful. They are the old ones of mist and music, and they do not like to be seen. The girl's name was Morangi. She lived in a small settlement on the edge of Aotearoa, where the trees grew so close they whispered to each other at night. Her mother was a weaver of cloaks, her father a carver of traps. But Morangi herself was known for one thing only, her voice. Even as a child, her lullabies could silence the crying of other children. And when she sang to the river, the eels surfaced as if listening. One night, the mists came too early. They slipped in before sunset, low and thick, veiling the path from the forest to the village. Morangi had gone to gather rorikau leaves for her mother's salve, and she had wandered too far. By the time she turned back, the world had changed. The trees no longer leaned in the same direction. The path she thought she knew had curled in on itself, and the light, what little remained, had turned silver. She walked without panic, her heart steady, her voice humming a tune her grandmother used to sing. It was that song, soft and old, that first caught their attention. She did not see them at first, only felt them, a shift in air, a change in sound. Then faintly, like wind through stone, came a flute, not made of bone or wood. No, this sound was like the wind had learned to sing. She followed. The deeper she walked, the quieter the forest became, not dead, only listening. And then, in a hollow circled by trees too tall to name, she saw them, pale, tall, not glowing, but not quite flesh either. Their eyes were white, not from blindness, but from light that came from within. Their skin held the hue of dawn fog. Their hair fell like river water. One of them, neither man nor woman, stepped forward. Its mouth did not move, but Morangi heard it speak. "You have walked into the breath between worlds." She did not answer. Instead, she bowed, not from fear, from no. The Patupaiarehe do not take children. They do not eat flesh, nor demand offerings. What they want, what they crave, is song. So they made her a guest. They led her through mists that curled like living cloth, across roots that glowed faintly with blue light. They fed her berries that had no seed, and let her sleep on beds of woven fern and memory. Time folded. She did not count days. She sang for them, Songs she did not know she knew. Songs in a tongue she could not name, but that came from her throat like smoke from a sacred fire. In return, they taught her silence. Not the silence of nothingness, the silence of listening, of hearing what grows between breaths. But all stories curve, and even in the land between lands, dawn finds its way. One morning, she woke to a sound she hadn't heard in what felt like centuries, the chirp of a paiwaka waka. The trees no longer glowed. The mist had thinned, and the Patupaiarehe stood in a circle around her, watching. Their eyes were no longer white, but empty. The one who had first spoken now held something in their hand, a flute, made from wood that shimmered like water. You must go. Your voice will carry us, but you cannot stay. Morangi felt no sadness, only weight. A knowledge passed to her like a cloak. She took the flute. She walked through the trees. The path unfolded without question. When she returned to her village, not a day had passed, but her eyes had changed. Her voice no longer sounded like a girl's, and when she sang, even the wind stopped to listen. She told no one what she had seen, but at night, in the quiet, she played the flute. It made no sound, none anyone else could hear, but the forest heard, and somewhere, hidden in the mists of Aotearoa, the Patupaiarehe listened. They say Morangi never aged, that even when her hair turned silver and her hands grew soft with time, her voice remained unchanged. Some say she was never truly returned, only borrowed back. Even now, on certain nights when the mists roll in early, you might hear her flute from within the bush, faint, high, and strange. And if you follow, you must tread softly. Do not speak. Do not light a fire. Only listen. For the Patupaiarehe, he do not forget, and they do not let go of those they have marked. So if the mist moves against the wind, if the birds fall silent, if your name feels suddenly unfamiliar in your mouth, turn back. Not from fear, from respect. Because some songs do not belong to this world, and some voices were never meant to stay. Have you ever seen an island that wasn't there the day before? Have you ever watched the sea and felt that something was watching back? Not with eyes, but with memory. The ocean keeps secrets the land cannot bear, and sometimes, when the tides shift just so, it reveals things not meant to be found. There is an island off the coast of Aotearoa that no map will show. Motupo, they call it the Night Island. It is not a name spoken lightly, and rarely at all in daylight. For the island is said to appear only to those already marked by darkness, those who dream of it before they see it, and feel it before they sail. No one chooses to go there, but some find themselves called. Tihene was a sailor, with no home but the sea. He was not old, but the salt had already thickened in his beard and bones. People said he was lucky. No storms took him, no sharks followed, no vessel of his ever cracked. But they did not see his eyes in the morning, how they searched the horizon for something he could not name. For many nights he dreamed of fog. Not mist, not cloud, but fog with a pulse, like a living breath. In the dream he drifted toward a shape barely seen, dark, low, covered in trees that bent toward the sea. When he awoke, the taste of salt lingered in his mouth, and his pillow was damp, though no storm had come. He told no one. Sailors know that some dreams follow you harder if you speak them aloud, but the dreams did not stop. They grew clearer. He saw birds with stone feathers, trees that wept black sap, and always, always, the sound not of waves but of weeping, not loud, not human, just mournful. One morning, before dawn, he took his small waka and sailed without direction. The sea was flat, the wind soft. No one saw him leave. Hours passed. Then perhaps days. Time blurred at sea. Then it rose. First a mist, so thick it blurred the sun to a pale bruise. Then beneath it a line, dark, jagged, like a scar across the sea. The island. It was real, or close enough. He stepped ashore, barefoot. The sand was not sand, it was ash, fine, black and cold. No birds cried, no waves broke, only stillness, thick and whole. The trees were crooked and thin, their bark like burned paper. As he walked inland, the air grew heavier, sweet with rot and memory. The path was not clear, but his feet knew it anyway, as if they had walked it before. In the center of the island stood a stone altar, not large, but heavy with presence. It pulsed, not with light, but with sorrow. Not grief, not pain, but something older. The kind of sorrow that does not cry anymore, only waits. Carved into the stone were names, hundreds, thousands. Some he recognized, names of lost sailors, drowned kin, ancestors whispered over but never buried. And one name that was his own, not Tiheni, but a name from his grandmother's tongue, one he hadn't heard since he was a boy. The name he was given before the world forgot it. He knelt, touched the stone, and in that moment he remembered. He remembered a time before time, when he had been here before, not as man, but as echo. He remembered carrying bones across the sea. He remembered losing something he had sworn to protect. He remembered breaking a promise. The island had not called him. It had waited. And now, it asked him only one thing, to stay, not in flesh, but in silence. He understood. He stood, turned back to the path, and did not take it. Instead, he walked into the trees. No one ever saw him again, but his waka returned. Empty, untouched, its wood smelling faintly of smoke and earth. They say the island still appears to those with unfinished stories, to those who carry shame or love, never spoken. It rises from the sea, silent, and offers no words, only remembering. Some who return cannot speak of it. Others forget everything but the sound of weeping trees. And some leave a stone by the sea, etched with their name, and never go to sea again. If, one day, you find yourself drifting in fog that does not lift, if the sea grows still, and the birds vanish, and the air smells of fire long gone, know this, you have been seen, and Motupo waits not to punish, nor to forgive, but only to witness. For in the heart of that hidden island, there is sorrow too sacred for forgetting, and in its silence, some find peace. Have you ever listened to a mountain as it slept? Not the rustling of trees or the trickle of distant streams, but the deep low hum beneath stone. It is the breath of the earth herself, old and slow and sorrowful. And in Aotearoa there are mountains that breathe with more than just fire. They say long before the first canoe touched the shore, before the flax learned the wind's name, there was a volcano not of rage but of longing, and within it lived a spirit. Hy-Brasil, the volcano wife. She was not born of ash. She was not born of flame. She came from the silence between eruptions, the hush before the burst, the warmth between two cold winds. This is her story, and the story of the village that forgot her. The mountain was called Tiahehwekamo, the fire that sleeps. It had not erupted in generations. Grass had grown on its black slopes. Children played near its base, chasing birds and swinging on kohai branches, and the people built their homes nearby, thinking the mountain had grown old or had lost its teeth. But mountains do not forget, and neither do the spirits within them. Hy-Brasil watched them with something like love. She watched the babies born, the lovers singing, the fires kindled every morning. Her warmth rose through the soil, making gardens rich and flowers heavy with scent. She was not jealous, not at first, until they built a sacred house on her slopes, not for her but for another, a foreign god. A wooden carving, with painted eyes and no breath. They danced songs no longer tied to the earth. They sang in voices that did not know her name, and Hy-Brasil began to grieve. She did not erupt. She sighed, and when a volcano sighs, the air grows strange. The first to notice were the dogs. They would not go near the mountain. They howled at midday and hid at night. Then came the dreams, dreams of smoke with faces, of footsteps on rooftops, of voices beneath the earth calling out in songless tongues. The village healer, an old woman named Were, knew the signs. She had heard the tales whispered by her mother's mother. So she climbed the mountain alone one night, wrapped in flax and silence. She reached the summit before dawn. The crater was dry, but not cold. Mist hovered in the air, not from clouds but from breath. And in the center, where no plant grew, stood a figure of steam. Hy-Brasil. She did not speak with a mouth, but with warmth, a memory placed gently into Wethder's bones. She showed her a time long ago, when people danced only to thank the land, when songs were shaped by bird call and firelight. She showed the moment the mountain first slept, trusting the people to remember her. And she showed the forgetting. Where wept, not from fear, but from the grief of having let love be replaced. She bowed low and whispered a promise, not to awaken the village with fire, but with remembrance. And then she vanished, swallowed by the mist. The next morning, Wera stood in the village square and sang a song no one had heard before. And yet every elder remembered. It was soft, rising in waves, like steam escaping through moss. She taught it to the children. She taught it to the birds. The village changed. No longer did they build on the mountain's skin. They laid offerings of warmed stones and flowers on the old path. They sang Hy-Brasil's name in lullabies and called her into the steam baths, into the cooking fires, into their breath. And the mountain sighed again. But softer this time, a sigh of knowing, of being remembered. It is said now that whenever the clouds hang low over Tiahiwakamoe, you must stop and listen. If you hear nothing, listen deeper. You may feel the breath of Hy-Brasil on your cheek, warm, sorrowful, but no longer alone. She is not a spirit of fire. She is a spirit of warmth, unspoken, of songs nearly forgotten, of grief that does not burn, but warms from within. Do not offer her fear, offer her memory, for the earth remembers all that is planted in it, even songs. And the breath of a volcano wife may rise through your dreams one night, as mist curls around your shoulders, and in that moment, if you whisper her name, she may sigh through your heart, not as a warning, but as a blessing. Have you ever stood at the edge of the world where land falls away into sky and sea, where the wind does not whistle, but keens, like an ancestor calling across time? There is such a place, high on the northern cliffs of Aotearoa, where spirits leap into the beyond. Pireinga, the leaping place. It is not a place of fear. It is a doorway, a breath between worlds. And near that edge once lived a man who carved the bones of the dead, not to decorate, not to sell, but to remember. His name was Hamuera, though most called him the listener. He was blind, but saw more than most. His hands, calloused and careful, moved over bone like a priest over scripture. Each morning he walked to the edge of the cliff with his walking stick and sat by the Pohutukawa tree, the ancient one whose roots reached down into the sea mist, where the souls of the departed are said to climb toward the afterlife. He would sit and listen, not to the wind, but to the hush beneath it. And when the time came, he would choose a bone from the satchel at his side and begin to carve. He did not ask whose bone it had been. He did not need to, for the bone spoke, not in words, not in cries, but in impressions, a chill on the fingers, a pull behind the heart, a scent like dried earth or blooming flax. He shaped each bone into a pendant into a pattern into a story, spirals of grief, hooks of journey, tears that curved into waves. Each carving was different, each one necessary, not for the living, but for the dead. For the souls that passed through Tirginga were not always ready. Some still clung to their name, to their sorrow, to the unfinished verses of their lives. And it was said that if a spirit carried too much weight, it would drift, not rise, not fall, just linger. That is where Hamuera's carvings came in. He placed them gently in the hollows of trees, tied them to the ends of flax stalks, set them in the water, where they drifted out with the tide. It was not magic, it was remembering. Until one morning Hamura found a bone that was different. It was smooth, long, and cold as stone. The moment he touched it, the wind stopped. He sat beside the Pohutukawa tree and listened, but the bone said nothing. No scent, no sorrow, no shape, only silence. Days passed. Still he carved nothing. He kept the bone wrapped in soft cloth, worn close to his chest. One night, the stars vanished. Not behind cloud, but as if someone had breathed them out. The sea below Taringa roared, though there was no storm. And in his sleep, Hamura dreamed of a woman without a face, standing in the surf, reaching toward the cliff. When he awoke, the cloth was gone. The bone lay bare in his lap. His fingers moved before his mind understood. The carving took no pattern he had seen before. It flowed like smoke, like grief held too long. Curves that wept, edges that shimmered. It was the shape of silence given form. When it was done, he knew. This was not a bone of a person. This was the bone of the land itself, perhaps from deep below. Taringa, perhaps from a forgotten Taniwha, perhaps from the spine of Aotearoa, long before it had a name. He placed the carving beneath the great Pohutukawa tree, not high, not hidden, but low, close to the roots, where the wind breathed thick and salty. And that night, the tree bloomed, though it was not the season. Red flowers burst forth like flame, and the scent of earth and smoke rose like a chant. No one in the village saw it, only Hamura, and he smiled. For the first time in years. In the days that followed, those who mourned found peace more easily. The cries of grief quieted faster. The winds near the cliff began to carry laughter. Hamura carved fewer bones after that. Not because there were fewer dead, but because something had shifted. The doorway had been honored. The forgotten had been seen. On the day Hamura died, the sky was clear. His body was found sitting upright, his hands folded. At his side was the carving, polished, smooth, cool to the touch, as if it had never been made. They buried him near the tree, facing the sea. And to this day, the Pohutukawa blooms out of season. Not always, only when a soul needs help finding the way. It is said that if you visit Taringa and stand beneath the blooming tree, you may hear Hamura's breath in the wind, steady, warm, quiet. Not a ghost, not a whisper, just a remembering. And if you listen with the part of you that grieves, you may feel something settle in your chest, a small weight, not heavy, but full. And in that moment, you may know, you too are being carved, not in pain, not in stone, but into story. And stories, once carved, are never lost. Have you ever walked to the edge of a river at night and felt the stars ripple on its skin? There is one river, not marked on any map, where the sky floats on the water and the past breathes in mist. It is said to flow between what was and what will be. Not just a river of water, but a river of time. And if you find it in dream, you may also find the canoe. It waits in the dark, carved of nightwood and inlaid with veins of glowing shell. They call it Te Waka o Rua Tea, the canoe of shadow light, for it sails between realms, neither alive nor dead, neither real nor unreal, but true. Few have seen it. Fewer have ridden it. But one such rider was Te Marama, a girl born beneath a moonless sky, with eyes that reflected stars even in daylight. She was not like others. She did not speak in full sentences until the age of 7. But when she did, her first words were, "The river remembers." The elders marked her strange, but not cursed. They let her wander near the cliffs, near the waterfalls, near the ancient stones no one else dared touch. And she listened, not with ears, but with her skin, her bones, her breath. The trees leaned toward her. The birds quieted when she passed. Even the wind turned its head. One night, in her 12th winter, a comet tore across the sky. Not fast, but slow, like a burning fish swimming upstream. And in her sleep, Timarama dreamed of a voice calling her name from far downriver. She woke to mist at her window. Not morning mist, but something deeper, older. And when she stepped outside, the world had hushed. No dogs barked, no leaves stirred. Even the crickets had gone still. She followed the mist, barefoot, silent, all the way to the bend where the river deepened and turned black. And there, waiting, was the canoe. Tiwaka Oruatia. Its hull gleamed like obsidian soaked in moonlight. There were no paddles, no sail, no sound, but she knew, in the marrow of her bones, it had come for her. Without fear, she stepped in, and the river moved. They traveled not forward, but inward, into memory, into dream. The stars above became stars below. The air became thick with scent, of flax, of smoke, of tears. Time folded. She saw her mother as a child, hiding behind ferns. She saw her grandfather carving runes into stone with fingers bleeding and sure. She saw wars, weddings, storms, births, all layered upon the same soil, the same waters, all part of her. And then, the river opened, not wide, but deep. A tunnel of light and shadow stretched out before the canoe, and at its mouth stood a figure, tall, cloaked, made not of flesh, but of woven feathers and whispering leaves. Its eyes were voids filled with stars. Its voice, when it came, was not sound, but memory. "You carry too much," it said. "Let me take some." Timarama did not answer, but her heart beat slower, steadier, and as she exhaled, something left her. A fear she hadn't known she held, a grief that had nested behind her ribs. The figure nodded and stepped aside. The canoe passed through. Now the river was sky. Now the canoe was bone. Now she was not Timarama, but all who had come before. 1,000 lives sang in her breath. 1,000 dreams pulsed in her veins. She saw the weaving, not of cloth, but of spirit, the loom of the world, where each soul was a thread tangled, broken, glowing, healed. She saw where hers fit, and where it frayed, and where it shone. And when the canoe came to rest, it was on the shore of her own body. She awoke by the riverbank, mud on her feet, starlight in her hair. In her hand was a single feather, white at one end, black at the other, balanced. She rose and walked home, said nothing, but her eyes glowed like embers. From that night on, she sang, not songs she had learned, but songs the land taught her. She sang the stones awake. She sang the birds to rest. She sang to those in grief, and their tears turned to seed. And every so often, when the mist grows thick along the river, someone will hear singing, and if they follow, barefoot and still, they may see the canoe waiting, not to take them away, but to bring them home. For the canoe of shadowlight does not sail toward death. It sails toward truth. And the truth is, we are more than what we remember. We are all rivers, all riders, all stories, yet to be sung.